Hey, folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. We have breaking news coming to you today on Tuesday, July 16th. You know, obviously, we're still recovering as a nation here in the United States, and President Trump is still recovering from the assassination plot against him on Saturday in Pennsylvania. Well, folks, the threats are coming 20% seemingly from all angles because today we are learning that the Iranian regime also reportedly has been plotting to assassinate President Trump. And in recent weeks, that threat has intensified. Now, some backdrop here. This is, in a sense, in one way, it's not new in terms of we've known this for a few years that Iran has set its sights on President Trump, not only him, but members of his cabinet, whether it was former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, also John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor. So there's several people, Brian Hook, who worked in the State Department during the Trump administration, several people the Iranian regime has targeted. Why? Because Iran blames them for the death of Qasem Soleimani, the not so dearly departed Iranian terror master who President Trump successfully ordered killed in January 2020. And for 4.5 years since then, folks, the Iranian regime has been obsessed with getting revenge. So now we have these reports that Iran has been trying to do exactly that, amplifying those threats, apparently, at least behind closed doors in Iran, and actively seeking to take out President Trump. And I'm sure that his climb in the polls in the past few weeks made him an even more attractive target for them in that they don't want to deal with him again. And right now, President Trump's got a lot of momentum, and we'll talk about that. And chances look good in November for him, no doubt. And the Iranian regime, and I'll use the word, is dreading 4 more years of Donald Trump. They don't want to see him back in office. They've had a cakewalk with Joe Biden and the Democrats. President Trump is someone who is much more unpredictable, to say the least, for the Iranian regime, someone they hate and they fear, folks. And there's good reason for that. Number one, and we'll get into the details, the specifics of this assassination plot in a second, but it's important that you know this backdrop about the history of Donald Trump and the Iranian regime. Why does Iran loathe and fear Donald Trump? And why would they, to the point where they're hatching an assassination plot against the former and perhaps future president of the United States? I'll give you a few reasons real quick. Number one, obviously, the takeout of Qasem Soleimani. Look, he was the most notorious, most powerful, and influential terrorist in the world. And other than the supreme leader of Iran, he was arguably the most powerful man in that country, the second most, I should say, powerful man in the entire country of Iran. Then in one fell swoop, one drone strike, he was taken out as he stepped off a plane at Baghdad International Airport in early January 2020. And by the way, that was a year 2020 that was bookended by the death of Soleimani in January and the death of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh in November 2020. He was the father of Iran's nuclear weapons program. He was taken out by, reportedly, the Israeli Mossad. So 2020 was not kind to the Iranian regime. But, okay, the takeout of Qasem. Why would Iran fear and loathe Donald Trump? Number one, the takeout of Qasem Soleimani. Number two, Trump, while he was in office, pulled the United States out of that disastrous Iran nuclear deal, where the Iranian regime was receiving a windfall, billions of dollars in sanctions relief from the Obama administration before it. And Joe Biden, by the way, is very eager to revamp that deal and piece it back together. Trump said, this is crazy. Why are we doing this? Pulled the U.S. out of it. Number three, he designated Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps as a terrorist organization, which meant sanctions on them, more scrutiny on them. Look, the IRGC, we call it that for short, basically the Iranian regime's version of the SS under Hitler, in that the IRGC answers directly to the supreme leader of Iran, and they have a hand in everything, including the Iranian economy. So he designated them. Wow, another message sent. He recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He said, look, it's Israel's. Case closed. The story's over. The Golan, which Iran is trying to set up shop on, Trump did that. He moves the embassy to Jerusalem, the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, and says this is the ancient and ancestral and eternal capital of the state of Israel. Iran didn't like that very much. He also cuts funding to the Palestinian Authority and to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA for short, two terror hotbeds. Now, that wasn't directly related to Iran, but bigger picture, it sent a message to Iran and all terrorists that their funding, that the party was over, their funding would be cut off. Lastly, just off the top of my head, the Abraham Accords. And look, one of the reasons Iran pushed Hamas to carry out October 7th was to negate any potential peace deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The Iranian regime and the Iranian axis see the Abraham Accords, Israel coming to a normalization of relations with these Sunni Arab nations as a threat to them. All of this, hey, that's a lot. That's 7 major points. That's not even including bombing the Assad regime in Syria after it used chemical weapons. Trump followed through and he told Assad, if you use chemical weapons, we're going to hit you. And unlike some former U.S. presidents, he actually kept his red line. And all of this sent a powerful message to the Iranian regime to the point where they want to target the former president of the United States. Okay, here's some more details. Before we get into the exact details of this plot, and again, just breaking today, if you're just joining us, folks, we are live here, and hey, we're still, the dust hasn't even settled from Saturday night's assassination attempt against Donald Trump, and many questions surround that, folks. Hey, you've seen the footage, right? You had people shouting and screaming, there's a guy on the roof with a gun, telling law enforcement, and nothing was done. We could do a whole separate live stream on that and the details that are coming out or not coming out there. But in the meantime, hey, if you like what you're hearing, if you like current events and news from a biblical perspective, that's the key point, unapologetically, be sure to subscribe to The Watchman right here on YouTube and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Folks, we're fast approaching 1 million subscribers for such a time as this. We're happy about that because that means it gets the message out. We don't do this just for the heck of it. We're doing it so people hear a message of truth in these upside down times, Bible times that we live in. The prophetic chess pieces are moving on the board, and we want you to have the information you need, not only for yourself, but for your friends, for your families, your neighbors, your coworkers, your loved ones. You need to know. We think some of this stuff's heavy, but number one, we're always going to give you encouragement. And number two, we think you'd rather know than not know. Ignorance is not bliss. And as followers of Jesus, as Christians, and we have non-Christians watching as well, but I speak for me as a follower of Jesus, I don't think it's wise to walk around with my head buried in the sand like an ostrich and ignore what's happening in the world around me. Jesus never said, until I return, you just sit there on the couch, eat a bag of chips, and wait for me. You don't need to do anything. Just wait. No. He said, occupy until I come. He told his disciples, go out, be proactive, be men of action. So we need to be men and women of action in these times. That's why we do what we do. So we would love if you could subscribe. Okay, some more specifics about this plot. Now, your favorite news outlet, I know everyone, this is your favorite. I'm just reading this off my phone. Big CNN viewers, I know that we have here. I'm kidding, but in all seriousness, CNN did break this story today. Now everyone else is running with it as well, but this is according to CNN. The U.S. Secret Service, I'm just reading this straight off my phone. That's why I'm looking down. The U.S. Secret Service ramped up security after receiving intelligence of an Iranian plot to assassinate Donald Trump. Now, there was no known connection between this Iranian plot and the actual shooting on Saturday. And we'll talk about that a bit more as well, and the spiritual prophetic ramifications there. But in the meantime, U.S. authorities obtained intelligence from a human source in recent weeks, meaning someone on the ground in Iran, I presume, from a human source of a plot by Iran to try to assassinate Donald Trump. This development led the Secret Service to increasing security around the former president in recent weeks. Multiple people briefed on the matter told CNN. That's interesting because it seemed to me that security was pretty lax on Saturday, July 13th, when President Trump was nearly killed by an assassin's bullet. So interesting, Secret Service was increased in security. And also there are persistent reports that the head of the Secret Service, and she denies this, but people who are pretty knowledgeable, including a former Secret Service officer, agent, I should say, Dan Bongino, has said, no. His sources are telling him that the Secret Service did not provide, despite repeated requests and threats, did not provide extra security to Donald Trump. And for that matter, RFK Jr., who's another candidate here, who's obviously got a family history of people being assassinated. So very interesting here, but a little bit more here on this plot. A U.S. national security official said the Secret Service and the Trump campaign were made aware of the threat by Iran before Saturday's rally. Okay, interesting. Trump campaign not commenting on it. Secret Service officials have warned the Trump campaign repeatedly against holding outdoor rallies, which pose greater risks than events to which the agency can better control access. The warnings have been more general in nature. Interesting. So that's CNN broke it. Others are picking up. Here's Fox News' take on it. I'll give you both sides here, right? The U.S. Secret Service has increased protection of former President Donald Trump in recent weeks. And again, really, it didn't seem that way on Saturday, but I digress. Due to intelligence suggesting a possible plot against him by the Iranian regime to attempt an assassination. Two federal law enforcement sources told Fox News the level of the plot by Iran is unclear. And that's a key point here, folks. We don't know where this plot was, who was involved, where it was in development, so to speak, how far along it was. We don't know. We don't have any details at all yet on that end in terms of hardcore specifics and minute details. What we do know more generally, and multiple outlets reporting this now, federal law enforcement sources confirming that there's been a lot of chatter in recent weeks about Iran potentially targeting former and perhaps future President Donald J. Trump. And again, I started off talking about this, telling you that it's really not surprising. And I hate to say that, but for 4.5 years since the death of Qasem Soleimani, which President Trump ordered, in which he said, yeah, I did it. Yeah, we did it. We took him out. He was evil. He had American blood on his hands and plans to kill more Americans in the works. So before he was able to kill more of my people, President Trump said, who I'm sworn to protect as the commander in chief, yeah, I ordered this butcher taken out so he couldn't kill any more innocent people. But ever since then, the Iranian regime has been hell-bent on revenge. And I said at the top, let me repeat if you missed it. Trump, Mike Pompeo, Robert O'Brien, John Bolton, and Brian Hook, 5 members, I should say, of the Trump administration have basically been targeted, bounties on their head, so to speak, not literally, but targeted by the Iranian regime. Maybe there were bounties, God forbid, I don't know. But the Iranian regime has been saying all along that we are going to get revenge for this, for what happened to Soleimani. Because, folks, Soleimani, I mentioned in the beginning, almost irreplaceable for the Iranian regime. He was the point man on nearly everything in the regime, especially when it came to putting Iran's worldview, its ideology, into action, making it tangible. This ideology of dominating the Middle East first and destroying Israel, and then global domination, taking the Iranian Revolution worldwide. He was the point man on that. He was the go-between between Iran and its ring of fire, between the regime and its proxies. Soleimani was the guy. Whether it was Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, the Assad regime in Syria. inroads in the West Bank, which we know as Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland. No matter who, Qasem Soleimani was the guy. He was the terror master, the second most powerful man in that regime, other than the Ayatollah. So, of course, his death, not only did it send a message to Iran on many levels, but they want to avenge it. So this is what you have. And what are your thoughts on this? Now, again, the first reports here are, look, this had no connection to the Saturday plot. Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 20-year-old maniac who was killed as he tried to kill the former president of the United States. No Iranian link there, according to all the reports coming out. But this is two assassination plots, folks, in the past few weeks against Trump. And today, a knife-wielding madman was apparently stopped outside of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. I say all this to say, we live in dangerous times. Very dangerous times, tumultuous times, unpredictable times. Now, I unpacked this on the newscast over the past few days, but literally the United States, I'm an American, I'm sitting here. And whether you like America, you don't like America, whether you live here or you don't, it's pretty safe to say that for all of our problems right now as a nation, we're still the most powerful nation in the world. I don't boast about that at all. I'm just giving you cold, hard facts, militarily, economically, et cetera. Despite weak leadership right now, obviously, despite many chinks in the armor, so to speak, and a lot of problems, the U.S. is still considered the most powerful country in the world. So the most powerful country in the world, and before Joe Biden, the leader of the free world, but he's not showing much leadership clearly, I would say, folks, I don't exaggerate, was one slight last-second head turn by Donald Trump, a quarter of an inch, quite literally, from the very real possibility of civil war. If Donald Trump at the last second would not have turned his head, that bullet was coming straight for his head. Instead, he turned at the last possible millisecond. He turned, and a slice of his upper right ear was taken off by that bullet. But if he didn't do that slight head turn, we'd be having a much different conversation right now. And Iranian plots against him would have been not at the top, because who knows what would be going on in the streets of the United States right now. Because we still have a lot of questions, number one, about the shooter and how this all went down and how he wasn't stopped. But by the grace of God, we had divine intervention. And whether you don't like Donald Trump, you like him. I know there's very, very many opinions on Donald Trump. To me, I think it's pretty undeniable that this was miraculous on Saturday. Again, a quarter of an inch, a last millisecond head turn, changed everything. And so now we have, though, just for you to know, it's not something where Donald Trump is out of the woods. And it's important that we report on this additional plot from the Iranian regime. That this is the kind of guy, and I believe, folks, he's someone who has been a bulwark holding up the plans of evil men, of people who want to see a one world government and a global governance and a great reset. We've talked about that here previously on the Watchman. And Trump says, no, I'm not having it. I'm a nationalist. I'm a patriot. I love my country. And no, we're not going to sign on to all the globalist nonsense. We're not going to do it. Under his leadership, America was a fiercely sovereign nation. And that dashes the plans of a lot of people in Europe and at the UN and around the world. And at the World Economic Forum in Davos, who don't want America to stand athwart from the rest of the world and say, look, this is who we are. We're sovereign. We're America first. We care about our country first, as every country should. Brits should be Britain first. Chinese should be China first. Russians should be Russia first. French should be French first. Israeli should be Israeli first. That's common sense. That's how it works in a nation state. You care about other nations. You don't wall yourself off and isolate yourself from the world, but you put your country's interest first. That's how things work and have since the dawn of time. So if you lead a particular nation, you should have that nation's interests first and foremost at the root of your policies and your worldview. Now, the problem with that is that there are many so-called and self-declared global citizens who don't see it that way. And Donald Trump has never claimed to be a global citizen, unlike Barack Obama, who called himself a citizen of the world. Now, Donald Trump cares about the world, and he's obviously meeting with world leaders, traveling the world on a regular basis. Common sense here, but there's a big difference. And there are many in this world in very elite, influential positions who do not like that. And again, when Trump exposes, the Bible says everything done in darkness will be brought to light. And I think we're seeing that now. And the kangaroo court cases against Trump are falling apart. Yesterday, a Florida judge threw out a case, the classified documents case. By the way, Joe Biden also had some classified documents issues of his own, but the media didn't seem to get, and the federal court system didn't seem to get, and the Justice Department, too worked up about that. Very interesting. But I said at the beginning, it seems that Trump has momentum, and perhaps God is, and we don't know what's going to happen in November or before November, but perhaps God is bringing some things that were done behind closed doors out into the light, and some nefarious things and nefarious actors are going to be exposed. It feels like perhaps there's been a bit of a shift in the past few days. I think it may have started with that debate a few weeks ago. Joe Biden, obviously, if anyone watched for 4 years, you saw he wasn't up to the task. I'm not trying to take a pot shot at the guy. It's just he was clearly not cognitively or physically up to the task. It was obvious in 2020 when he hid in the basement. His team hid him in the basement for the better part of the campaign. There were issues then. It's only gotten worse 4.5 years later. And that was anyone who doubted that, it was exposed for all the world to see on June 27th at the debate against Trump. Trump looked sharp. I interviewed him back in May. He was very, very sharp, engaged. So you had quite a contrast there, folks. Quite a contrast. Picture this. Iran now, looking to target Trump. And it's not a new development, but maybe there's more specifics now. Maybe it's ramped up in recent weeks as, again, his election prospects have improved. That's a key point. Iran does not want Donald Trump in office. And does Russia, does China, does North Korea? Because let me tell you, if right now, folks, and picture this, if you're Vladimir Putin, if you're Xi Jinping, if you're Kim Jong-un, if you're the mullahs in Tehran, and let's do a split screen, right? On one side of the split screen is Joe Biden, kind of stumbling around and looking off into outer space and being led by the arm by his wife. And even at the G7 summit last month, the Italian Prime Minister Meloni had to walk over and physically redirect Joe back into the crowd and back into the picture because Joe had wandered off and said, "Oh, look, a bird," and was in La La Land. And again, I'm not taking a pot shot at the man. It's dangerous. It's not funny. It's dangerous because there's a gathering storm right now against America and the free world and against Israel, led by Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. So those leaders, picture a split screen here, folks. Those leaders on one side are looking at old Joe, staring off into space and looking ready for bed. And in the other side of the split screen, there's Donald Trump covered in blood 30 seconds after being shot and pumping his fist with the American flag behind him and shouting, "Fight." Who would you rather see in office if you were the bad guys? Would you rather that guy who, again, you might not like Trump, whatever. Okay, you might like him, you might not like him. I think it's pretty undeniable that he's a fighter and the man has a warrior spirit. And I don't know how you could deny that. If you do deny that, you're blinded by hatred and Trump derangement syndrome. I say that because for 9 years, since he came down that escalator and declared his candidacy, It's been a nonstop onslaught of hatred, of targeting, of demonic rage against the man. They've tried to destroy him, his family, his finances. The Justice Department, the U.S. government was weaponized against him, 4 different cases in 4 different jurisdictions. It's madness. And now they try to kill him, his enemies. And by his enemies, I mean, obviously, this young man, we don't know, did he act alone? They're saying he acted alone. We don't know anything yet, really. Clearly an enemy of Trump when you try to kill him. So I lump him in there for sure. The man's been through hell, and he's still standing. And last night at the Republican National Convention, he walks in with a bandage on his ear, the top of his ear, part of his ear blown off. And he's not like 20 or 30 years old. The man's 78. He's got the energy of a 20-year-old. He's a machine. It's incredible. But you might not like him. You can't deny the guy's got guts and he's a fighter. Sorry. And I don't know. Listen, folks, I've been shot. I've shared the story before. I shared it last night on the Stakelbeck Tonight Show. By the way, if you want to watch, look, it's our nightly show on TBN every night, Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. I broke this down last night. And I said, look, for Trump, could this be a turning point for him in his life? Near-death experiences. And again, I encourage you to check out the Stakelbeck Tonight Show every night. But last night, you can find it on TBN Plus. We're every night hitting all of these points. We've also got a Stakelbeck Tonight YouTube channel. Yes, a second YouTube channel at Stakelbeck Tonight. Check it out. But I said, look, with Trump, I think back to Ronald Reagan. In 1981, he survived an assassin's bullet. And Reagan wrote in his diary after that, no matter what I do now, it's all for God. My presidency now is dedicated to God. He rededicated his life to the Lord. Having a near-death experience has a way of doing that to you. You're never the same. We have Reagan, of course, and he went on. God used him in a mighty way. The U.S. prospered economically, won the Cold War under Reagan's leadership against the evil atheistic Soviet Union. There was a resurgence in patriotism and national pride. That's what happens when you follow the Lord and your whole heart as a leader is turned towards the Lord. I can tell you my own experience. Folks, I have a bullet in my hip, a hair from my femoral artery. I very nearly would have bled out if it hit that femoral artery. I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So that bullet's still in me. I was also beat half to death with a baseball bat, both incidents in my hometown of Philadelphia. But God spared my life twice. And I can tell you, when something like that happens to you, you're never the same. And it brings your life mission into clearer focus. You reevaluate everything and you ask a lot of questions. Lord, why am I not dead right now? And you're overwhelmed and humbled with gratitude to God. And you thank him constantly every single day. I can tell you, watching what happened Saturday night brought back some very difficult memories for me of someone who was shot and seeing President Trump duck. But then I was encouraged because I said, you know what? This is the kind of experience. It could be a game changer for him spiritually and by extension, our nation. Personal revival, national revival. This is on the table now. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but I can tell you, just speaking personally and speaking to Ronald Reagan's experience after getting shot and what it did to him. I saw Donald Trump walk into the Republican National Convention last night. And again, we probably might have some Trump haters on here. He's a very polarizing guy. I know. But I saw a man who walked in with just humbled by the whole experience. He didn't walk in puffing his chest out or anything like that. He looked emotional. He looked choked up. And he came in and the bandage on his ear, his first public appearance since being shot only 48 hours prior. Who knows what's going on in his head, his heart right now, or what God is doing in him and what God could do through him. So I ask you to keep that in mind when we have experiences like this. And his speech Thursday night can be very revealing. He said, look, I rewrote it. And he said multiple times, I'm here because of God alone. God spared my life. He said it in the aftermath. It's a miracle that I'm here. I should be dead. God alone is the reason I'm here. So he acknowledged the hand of the Lord in that miracle on Saturday, where he, at the last second, turns his head just as the bullet is whizzing by. I don't know. I don't believe in coincidences, folks, and I don't believe in random luck. I'm a follower of Jesus. I believe God's in control. So take from it what you will. But one reason that the Iranian regime is up to these kind of plots here, and by the way, 2011, look, if you doubt the Iranian regime's intent here and that they would do something like this, two reminders for you. In 2011, an Iranian operative was arrested who was plotting to attack on U.S. soil the Israeli and Saudi embassies in D.C. And I was living in D.C. at the time. This Iranian operative was plotting to hit and attack Israeli and Saudi embassies in D.C. That was pretty bold. Not a lot of fear there. That was under the Obama administration. And why would Iran be fearful under that administration, which was tripping over itself to strike a disastrous nuclear deal with the Iranian regime? They smelled weakness. And they almost took advantage until this Iranian operative was arrested in 2011. And now, why would Iran be more bold targeting former U.S. officials and a former U.S. president? Clearly, Iran doesn't fear consequences or repercussions from Joe Biden. Would Iran be plotting such things on American soil against former leaders if Trump was at the helm? I don't think so. I think they had a healthy fear of Donald Trump for all that he did, and I lined it out in the beginning. Iran does not want to see him back at the helm. And one reason for that is it will strengthen Israel. And I want to dig into this a bit more, folks, before the week is out with some more daily updates here. I'm going to throw this out right now. We've got thousands of people with us watching, and we've got a very intelligent, educated viewership. And I love you guys dearly, my watchmen and women on the wall. But assuming, and we shouldn't assume anything, but maybe presuming based on current trends and polls, say Donald Trump is back in office in November. What does that mean for the Middle East? And prophetically, what does that mean? The Middle East is the cradle of Bible prophecy. So what does it mean prophetically? What does it mean? Does Israel, here's a question for you. I don't know if Israel can do this. Today, look, Hezbollah launched 80 rockets at northern Israel just today. So that continues unabated. But does Israel say, wow, if you're in Israel's shoes right now, you're in Jerusalem, you're Bibi, you're his cabinet, do you sit back and say, wow, it looks like Trump is going to win? And again, we don't know. No time to get overconfident for anyone who supports President Trump. Anything can happen. A lot of time between now and November 5th, the election. If you're Bibi, do you say, you know what? He gets inaugurated in January. So that's what, 6 months? Does Israel wait 6 months before it strikes Hezbollah in that decisive way that we've talked about, and ground invasion? Obviously, the wintertime is not ideal to mount such an invasion. And this isn't a full-scale invasion, but it would be the southern half of Lebanon in order to push Hezbollah back. Does Israel say, you know what? Biden is hostile, his administration. Yeah, they're giving us some assistance, but they're withholding other assistance. And rhetorically, they're a problem. They're blasting Israel publicly. Not good. And they're begging Israel to not strike Hezbollah in Lebanon. Does Israel say, you know what? 6 months. Give us 6 months. Trump's in office, and then we move. Because Trump will stand back and let us do what we need to do and help. By help, I don't mean boots on the ground. I mean anything Israel needs, Trump will say, okay, we'll give it to you. Any armaments. Or does Israel say, we can't wait? This is intolerable. We got to move now. I think that question, that conversation has to be on the table, right? And I've been saying for months, how long can Israel wait to strike Hezbollah? This is intolerable. Over 5,000 Hezbollah rockets, missiles, and attack drones launched at Israel since October 8th, the day after October 7th, when Hezbollah began that barrage. Some 10,000 acres of land in northern Israel scorched. The list goes on. It's almost daily barrages here. How much longer can Israel hold its peace when it comes to Hezbollah? I don't know if Israel could hang on. Look, we don't even know who's going to be in office in January. Looks favorable for Trump right now, but a lot can happen. Keep it all in prayer, I would say. But one thing to remember about Israel, there are still some 80,000 Israelis evacuated in the north. And they have no return date. They don't know when they're going home. Hezbollah still perched there on that northern border. And folks, that's why I want to tell you about our sponsor for today's newscast, my good friends, Magen David Adom. It's SaveIsraelLives.com, I believe. SaveIsraelLives.com, or is it Save Lives Israel? I apologize. My trusty producer, Daniel, just corrected me. SaveLivesIsrael.com. You might say, wow, what do they do? Well, folks, number one, this is Israel's first response team, Magen David Adom. Ambulances, calls, emergencies. Magen David Adom is the first on the scene. After October 7th, Magen David Adom ambulances are there. First responders. In the north, when Hezbollah rockets are falling, Magen David Adom is the first line for Israel. I'm in Israel all the time. Their ambulances are everywhere. Magen David Adom's presence is always felt in the land of Israel. A mostly volunteer force putting their lives on the line. Some have been killed since October 7th in the line of duty, working for Magen David Adom. They're truly doing God's work. First on the ground, boots on the ground. SaveLivesIsrael.com. And folks, they're our sponsor today, and I strongly encourage you. You want to fulfill, a lot of people are asking me, how do I help Israel in this time of its greatest need? You want to fulfill that biblical mandate laid out in Genesis 12:3 and bless Israel? Magen David Adom is the perfect way to do it. We're honored to partner with them. I can't think of a better way. They are the people. They are the ones on the ground serving as that first line. Terror victims, victims of war, anyone in Israel who's hurt, who's in need, Magen David Adom is there, first on the scene. They are Israel's first responders. It's emergency response team. Amazing. SaveLivesIsrael.com. Check them out. Lend them your support. We love Magen David Adom, and we believe in them, and we're proud to partner with them. Hey, a lot to talk about. Keep that in mind as we chat here. What does the Middle East and the world look like if Donald Trump gets back in office in January? That's an interesting conversation to have. And what does it look like if Joe Biden stays in office in January? Let's talk about that more this week. Until then, thanks so much for watching us here. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.